Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Living in Alignment podcast. I am here with Mike Falkow, and Mike is the CEO of Meritus Media, the creative director at Falco Creative, former art director at Rogue Magazine. He's an ex-pro surfer. He grew up in South Africa. He's basically a former pro surfer turned screenwriter and marketer. So I think this is going to be a pretty interesting conversation, and I'm really excited about it. So how are you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, Amy. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, I just want to know well, I'd love to hear as much as you want to share about your career as a pro surfer, because I'm a surfer as well, and I'm kind of obsessed with surfing. Um, but how does a pro surfer go from that into becoming a screenwriter and a marketer? And anything you want to share about your story, I'd love to hear it.
Well, we can sort of circle back to it, but I think it's mainly a like a false sense of self-confidence that you can do things and being willing to fail at them. There's a hefty amount of that. Um, but oddly enough, I feel like surfing really prepared me for that. It's like if you're not willing to fail, if you're not willing to fall and try things, you're never going to progress. So do you remember the first wave you ever stood up on?
Hmm.
Do you remember? I'm sure every surfer has this, but like to me, it's a vivid memory.
Hmm.
And so that feeling kind of propelled me forward of like, this is a feeling of freedom like I've never had before. And this is like, it feels like I'm flying and like all of my troubles and all of the things that are bothering me in my life just melt away. So I was sort of chasing after that constantly ever since that moment. Um, and then I also had this thing of like I want others around me to to think that I'm good at something. Uh, so maybe a little bit of craving of validation from others, but that sort of led me into the idea of competing and started competing when I was 14. And by the time I was 18 or 19, then I was like, had competed in some big events and fancied myself as, well, shoot, maybe I have a shot at this. So ended up traveling a little bit and competing around the world. And yeah, it was a great time. I have a lot of stories from those years.
I bet. How long did you do that? Until what age?
I stopped competing at 25, so that was, yeah,
11-ish.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I have one of my best friends here is a world champ. He's like fifth right now, longboarder.
Wow, cool.
I went out to Malibu last year to watch him in the world whatever they call it, the finals.
Right.
So cool.
That's
And he's
awesome.
yeah, and he's older, like he's 37.
Okay.
So he's kind of a legend.
Yeah. I was on tour with a couple of guys from that part of the world. There was the Hobgood brothers, Ben Bourgeois. There were a few of them on tour at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great community too. I loved it was so cool hanging out with him in Malibu because I got like the red carpet. I was hanging out mostly, sitting with his mom and his girlfriend on the beach watching and stuff.
Right.
He had all the connections in the athletes tent, and I got to meet a lot of the surfers, the other surfers, and everybody's just so, you know, the ocean has a way, when you spend a lot of time in the ocean, it has a way of making people kind of zen, just like you were talking about how like all your problems kind of go away when you're in the ocean.
Yeah.
It's what I love about the ocean. I'm
Well,
not,
there's that community thing as well of like wherever you go, anyone that you run into who has that similar interest, you instantly connect with on a level that you just can't explain to someone who doesn't have that experience.
yeah.
Like you could be, in some nowhere town surfing a little wave and someone paddles up from Brazil and you're like, hey, what's up? Like you're doing that thing. You have that commonality and it's the sense of community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I actually have a cool thing happened last year. I was in Mexico and I got in a really bad surfing accident in the prior August and hit my face. My face got hit with the board. It's still not completely healed. I have like a
Oh,
hematoma.
wow.
So I took, that was at the very end of the summer and I hadn't gotten back on my board. And then I was going to Mexico and I decided when I go to Mexico, I'm going to surf.
Hmm.
I'm going to get back on the horse and I'm going to surf. And so I decided to go surfing there and I ended up connecting with my friend who he gave me and my friends his villa to stay in Mexico. He's a surfer. And
Hmm.
I ended up connecting with his daughter to go surfing. And his daughter is, the last time I had seen her, she was 11. Her mom was one of my best friends, but her mom died like 9 years ago. And then I left. We all lived in Colorado at the time, and I left and I moved to North Carolina. So I hadn't seen this beautiful young woman since she was 11. And she's one of my best friend's daughters. So she was in Mexico the same time I was. And so I reached out to her and I said, "Do you want to go surfing?" Because she's a surfer. And she's like, "Yeah." So we met up to go surfing. And then she ended up moving in with me for the summer. I got her a job as a surf instructor because my friend that I was
Oh,
just
that's so
talking about has a
cool.
surf school here. So that one like experience, like meeting up to go surfing turned into, again, like you said, it's that bond that, you know,
I
because
mean, yeah, I totally get it. One of my oldest friends in LA, when I first came out here, a South African friend of mine was like, when you get to LA, you got to look up this guy, David. He'll take you surfing. I'm like, cool, okay. So I met up with this guy, and 25 years later, he's still one of my best friends.
yeah, it's funny. Well, my friend Tony that I keep talking about, the way I met him was when I moved here, I knew there was a world champ that taught surfing here. So I said,
Hmm.
as soon as I get there, I'm going to book a private lesson with him. He doesn't even do private lessons anymore, but he used to. And so I did a private lesson with him. And then, he met both of my kids and like he just became like a family friend. We've been friends this whole time now. I'm good friends with his mom. Like, yeah. So it was just all from that one lesson, kind of like your surf, well, your person that took you surfing or whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's definitely a common thread that bonds people together. I think that's why I'm obsessed with it. Like I've never been as good at it as you, but I'm obsessed with like the culture. I love watching movies about surfing and just seeing like the mindset, like the fanatical mindset that these, some surfers, a lot of surfers have about like chasing these waves and like doing like crazy things to get to these waves and like,
Well, it's also interesting. It's the one of the very few physical activities that the the playground, so to speak, like the field of play, is never the same.
yeah.
Like snowboarding, you're always going to have that mountain. There's always going to be those jumps. Skateboarding is always going to be a ramp. There's always going to be that curb. You know.
Mhm.
So in terms of like approaching it as a game and as a field of play, that one variable is the field of play itself. And so there's that chasing of that thing of like, now wave pools completely change that,
Yeah.
but like out in the ocean, it's just a factor of like, if I can figure out this thing on and do this thing that I want to do on a thing that's never going to be the same again. There's an odd challenge about that, but I think that's part of it. At least it was for me. Of like I got to figure this out. Like I want to do this thing, and then it's also this like improvisation with the ocean, and so you're almost like in a dance with nature, which
Yeah.
is a kind of an amazing thing. But
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's kind of this constant uncertainty and a game. Do you find, as you were saying that, I was thinking about marketing because it's kind of like that with marketing. I find it's almost like I always say everything in marketing is an experiment, but everything is always changing too, like especially with
hmm.
technology. And I feel like, like it's the same kind of thing. It's just like, we learn these skills and then tomorrow everything changes and we have to like adapt. We have to constantly adapt. So do you
Yeah.
find that it's made it easier for you in your career doing your marketing and the other things that you do? Do you find that the way that you applied it to the game of surfing has kind of helped you adapt in this type of work?
I have. I mean, there's a lot of lessons that I've taken from it of like number one is being present, because if you're not there in the moment, you get hurt. And so you're trained over years to be present and be in the moment with what's going on in front of you, and so you can adapt and act accordingly. And the other thing is when things get really intense, as surfers, we've trained our bodies to relax in those moments because if you tense up, you drown.
Mhm.
So, it's sort of like these survival instincts can easily carry over into very high intensity work environments. And also with like changing environments and being adaptable and being flexible and going, okay, where's the solution? Like let's figure this out and be sort of trying to sort of continually add pools of improvement wherever you go, kind of thing. Uh, so yeah, I think it definitely has taught me very important sort of basic fundamental lessons of how I approach life in general,
Mhm.
that easily translate into marketing, into PR, into writing, or pretty much anything else that I do for that matter.
Mhm. Yeah, I tend to, most of the surfers I know are pretty like Zen, chill
Mhm.
people. Like you were saying how you train yourself to just relax in intense situations. And I can, as you were saying that, I was just thinking about all the different ways that that does translate into life and probably why surfers are so chill
Yeah,
and don't seem to like get worked up very easily like some people do. So that
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. So what like what kind of are you're a screenwriter, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So, I don't know, it was maybe 15 or so years ago, I just got this idea of like, I think that would make a good movie, you know, and and having this sort of almost naive sense of I could do that, and then just tried it and not knowing anything about the structure of screenwriting or the rules or anything. Like I knew what a screenplay should look like because I've read them before. But aside from that, I was pretty much lost. And then fortunately, I had a friend of mine who's a pretty well-established screenwriter. And so I reached out to him and was like, would you mind helping me? I feel like I'm kind of lost. I had this sort of initial impetus of a story and I've gotten lost and I don't know what to do. And he was like, look, we might not be friends after this. If you really want my help and you really want my honest notes. I was like, no, please, like take a red pen to it. I know that I have a lot to learn. And he was very generous with his time and very honest with his notes and gave me a lot to think about and also gave me recommendations of books to read and things that would inform my way of thinking. And so I started my education of like, this is how you do this thing. And
Mhm.
over the course of, these years since then, I've written probably 10 screenplays and, a
Wow.
couple of them have gotten made and I've got probably three in various stages of almost getting made. We'll see. I mean, it's such an odd game of filmmaking that, I read a book 10 years ago and I've been trying to turn it into a film ever since. So it's a lot of it is hurry up and wait, you know.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, my brother just wrote a musical. He had no experience with that. He writes kind of songs. He lives in Telluride, Colorado, so he writes songs about like living in a ski town and like kind of like funny. Most of them are kind of like rap-ish, not all of them,
Mhm.
but he just decided he wanted to write a musical and he pulled it off. It got picked up by the theater company. They showed it for
Wow.
nights leading up to Christmas. He wanted me to come out and see it, so I flew out there just for this past Christmas and after the first night, the rest of the nights all sold out. which has never happened in that theater company before. And people were going to like multiple nights. Like I went to 3 nights, but people were going to 4 nights, 5 nights. Like people were obsessed with this musical. So now he's like, people are contacting him from like other ski towns saying, we want you to come here. But he's got 18 people in the cast and they have families and stuff. So it's not that easy to just go on the road. He has a family too, but then some people are like, I don't know, the director who kind of helped him walk him through it, kind of like your friend did for you, is giving him like, here are some of your options. You can sell the script, you can, there's different ways to go. But I don't know if you have any advice, but he's trying to figure out like he didn't do it to get rich. He did it to because it was a passion that he had. He had like this desire to, it's called Ski Bum the Musical, and it's kind of like his story. And it's a lot of people's story about like, go to college, get a degree, and then move to a ski town and get a night job so you can ski every day. And the next thing you know, 30 years have gone by and you're still
Yeah.
there, kind of thing. But he did like there was so much to it. And
Well, I mean, good storytelling is good storytelling. And so it sounds to me like he's on his way. You look there's a lot of uh not to speak in generalities, but I have heard from time to time that there are these sort of unwritten rules of writers and that you never get your first thing made. But there are exceptions. You look at someone like Aaron Sorkin, his first play that he wrote was A Few Good Men, and the guy has not stopped making like some of the best work in in Hollywood since he started. Like, just look at his career from The West Wing to everything else that he's done, right? And there was a South African writer, his name was Bryce Courtenay. He wrote a book called The Power of One. And he was told explicitly by someone that you never get your first book published. It'll literally just be a practice run. So, get it out of your system. And maybe by the time you've written your fifth novel, you might get something published. And so he wrote this first book of just like, yeah, I'll write from, you're supposed to write what you know. So I'll write my experience growing up in, World War II South Africa and kind of being an outsider. And it's just the story that I can tell. And so he knocked it out, and then it sat as a manuscript sort of holding a door open in his house. And I think it was his cousin or something like that was like, what's that? And he goes, oh no, don't worry about it. It's just a thing. And so she picked it up and read it and absolutely fell in love with it and was like, look, I have a friend who knows someone who might be in the publishing world. Do you mind? And he goes, go ahead. I know it won't get made. And sure enough, it was published. It was like a bestseller worldwide. It was on the New York Times. They made a film out of it. It's an incredible, incredible book. So there are these exceptions, where sure, some writers struggle and whatever, but like you say, here's the great story, and it's been turned into. Who would have thought that that could be turned into a musical? But it sounds great to me.
yeah, it was really, really well done. And I think it has a lot to do with who you know, though. Like I think the people that do make it right away, it like if it gets in the hands of the right person,
Well,
like
sure. I mean, sometimes the universe aligns and gives you an opportunity,
mhm.
So
Yeah,
either you grab it or you don't.
yeah. Because some people were like, you need to go to Broadway with this, and he was saying like in order to go to Broadway, it has to be published first, and then you have to get somebody to read it, and nobody will read it if it's not published. And I'm like, well, what if you had a connection that got it in the right person's hands? You know what I mean?
Exactly. There's always a door that can open.
Mhm. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, that's amazing that you've written 10 screenplays. It's pretty
I'd
cool.
have to count them out. That's an off the top of my head guess.
Is there anything that I would know that's like famous or known?
Oh no, I doubt it.
No. Cool.
I mean, a couple independent films. We did win some awards, but nothing that's, marquee studio type, big summer blockbusters or anything.
Do you go to like film festivals or anything?
Yeah, the last one that I wrote, we went to a few festivals. Unfortunately, it was right in the middle of COVID, so it was this strange thing of like remote festivals.
Yeah.
And we were all excited because we knew we had a good film at the end of making it, but we literally finished filming in February of 2020. I got back from London, and within a couple weeks, the pandemic hit. So it
Mm.
was this very, very odd experience of like, hey, you've won in Berlin, you've won in London. Can't go there, but here's an email saying that you won.
Wow. Wow. So what came first, screenwriting or marketing?
Actually, design. I
Design.
went to design school out of high school because I'd studied fine art in high school. And then my mom, being the smart woman that she is, she goes, well, why don't you take this course on graphic design and desktop publishing? I was like, well, I don't know anything about computers. I've never used one. It's like, well, maybe there's something to this. And so she signed me up for this course, just mainly to keep me out of trouble. Of like, you don't want to be a beach bum all day, getting yourself, devil's plaything is idle hands kind of deal. And I ended up really liking it, and so I was like, oh yeah, this is how you make magazines, and you can make logos and all kinds of cool stuff. And so that gave me a skill that sort of kept me out of having to get a waiter's job. Uh, and so it was something that I could do from home, and I could also get a job at agencies and things like that. So that was something that I had done first. And then as I was going along, eventually someone was like, hey, do you know how to build websites? And eventually I was like, yeah, I'm sure I can figure that out. And then so learned that. And then someone with a website needed me to write something. And so I was like, well, I'm fairly educated. I can string a sentence together. Sure, I'll give it a shot. And then it sort of progressed and evolved from there. And my mom has a background in PR, and she was a professor, spoke at a university and stuff like that. So it just sort of came together of like, well, every now and again she would have clients who needed design work or needed some writing done, and then it turned into social media marketing, and it just sort of evolved to the point where all of these little skills and hats sort of added up to a sum total of what I do now.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's kind of exactly how my story went as well. I would learn a
Yeah.
skill and then I would market it on Craigslist. Like, does anyone need a WordPress site? I like learned how to build a WordPress site, and then
Right.
I learned how to do like autoresponder email marketing. So I was offering that as a service and I just kept learning new skills and doing that. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's funny how that happens. And it is kind of addicting. Like, I don't know, I love it too. Like I love all of those things. Like it is fun and flexible hours and everything. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd much rather be doing this than clocking in at some cubicle. I
Yeah.
I I find that, you know, just for me, I'm not built for that.
Yeah.
So, and I love learning new skills and figuring things out, and it's like, here's something that I don't know how to do in brackets yet, you know.
Yeah, same. Yeah. And I always did the same thing. If someone would say, hey, can you do this? I'd be like, yeah. And then I'd be like, okay, I got to learn how to do this real quick.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of have to have that optimistic sense of like, well, I can learn something, you
Mm,
know.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I looked at you so you have two different websites that I looked at, and the one with all the design on it is like beautiful. Is that all your work, or do you have
Yeah,
like
that's all my work. Yeah, thanks.
amazing? Yeah, really, really beautiful stuff. You're way beyond my level of design skill, that's for sure. I never really design was never something. I mean, I designed my own website or whatever, but I can build websites, but I've never been like the graphic design piece was not something that I ever got really good at. So yeah, that's an impressive website. And
Thanks.
yeah. So you do that. So you build websites and do like all the design for all kinds of different like what kinds of things do you design for people?
Oh, I mean, it's anything from like a full branding, starting from scratch and building a brand to, oh, I need a logo, or uh I need a quick WordPress website, or I need a brochure or a pamphlet, or it completely spans the scale and the spectrum of what's needed depending on the client.
Mhm.
So, like one client we have now, they're in the wellness space, and I'm not doing any design because they have a whole in-house marketing and design team. And I'm like, you guys are doing great work. Like, there's no need for me to get involved there. I send you ideas and I send you content that we've written and they turn it into this beautiful visual. And I'm like, why would I want to take that over? You guys have got it covered.
So what are you doing for them? PR or SEO or?
Yeah, it's all of the above. So kind of started off as an online reputation management issue because they're launching a brand and one of the executives, there was some noise. Someone didn't like him and said some things online, and so we were initially brought on to help with that. And then we found out that they were about to launch the brand. And so we were like, well, really what this should be is kind of a side-by-side strategy of, okay, so we'll do as much reputation management as we can and, you know, uh, try and fill the vacuum of there's nothing else being said, but this one person going, I don't like you. And we're like, okay, well, you're entitled to your opinion, but there is all this other information about this person. So we kind of fill the vacuum in there and do that as sort of one lane. And then the other lane is doing a full-on brand launch, which would include like messaging architecture and content and reports and press releases. And then when we're ready, doing media relations and podcast pitching and like so all of the above.
Mhm. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, so I was looking at your site and so these are some of the brands you've worked with. Red Bull, you've got like some like really big brands on here. Red Bull, the Dodgers. I don't know why it's not. Let me see if I can stretch it out. Jiffy Lube, Disney, Time Warner Cable, New York Life. It just keeps going. Like usually people have Cirque du Soleil, Paul Frank. Like usually people have like their brands that we've worked with and it's like a few static. Yours
Yeah.
just scrolling across the screen and it just keeps going and going and going. So
Well, fortunately, we have a really eclectic team of people. And so not all of those brands mentioned in that list are strictly speaking clients of the agency. So it's like Red Bull was a client of my brother's, right? He worked with them extensively, was doing brand launches in South Africa and all kinds of things. But because he's a partner in the company, he's worked with Red Bull, so that's okay to say, right?
Mhm.
Similarly with some of the others, but yeah, it's over the course of the many years that we've been working in this space in one discipline or another, we've definitely had some great opportunities to work with some pretty nice brands.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your like the work, all right, for example, the majority of my audience are online entrepreneurs and online entrepreneurs. So if somebody was to like want to work with you, like what are some of the ways that you um just give me some examples of different things that you do for different brands.
Um, I mean that's kind of like asking how long is a piece of string, right? It's so I'm going to give you an answer that is we have a client who's in the healthcare space. She's a functional medicine doctor. And what she does is she interviews the person and treats every patient as an individual because not all diseases are the same and therefore not all the root causes of those diseases are the same. That's exactly how we approach our work, which is a client will come and say, we are dealing with this. And we go, okay, well, look, we have some things that we can apply, like that are universally applicable in terms of strategy, but they might not all meet your needs. Some of them will be completely redundant or not needed at all or whatever, right? So if someone goes, look, I need a new website. We go, okay, cool, great. We can do that. Uh, do you need copy for that website? Do you need design done for that website? How's your logo? Do you have any branding of any kind? What sort of marketing are you doing? I mean, the biggest question that I ask is what are your goals and what are you running into that's stopping you from achieving them? That informs most of what my approach would be.
That's a great question. I love that. That's a question that can be applied to a lot of businesses,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much.
exactly.
If you're going to somebody to solve a problem or whatever, fill a need, that's
Yeah, and the way we approach it really is that we're not trying to solve all of your problems because then you would be in a position of like, well, I have no problems. And a business generally needs problems. You want good problems rather than bad problems. Like, what do I do with all this incoming business? That's a good problem, right? So we're certainly not out to solve all of your problems, but what we do like to do is we think of ourselves as a creative ally in helping you play the game better.
I love it. I love it. So what else? You do SEO as well?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. That's kind of a no-brainer. Like everyone needs that, right?
Mhm.
And I'll give you a silly example. We worked with a company that they made rifle scopes, and they we were doing an analysis of like an SEO analysis, and one of the aspects of that is doing audience listening. And so you sort of put the feelers out, and we have tools that can sort of aggregate what the general sentiment is, what people are talking about, what keywords pop up a lot. And we kept seeing this one thing about bird watching, and they don't sell bird watching products at all. And then we found out that one of their rifle scopes has become a favorite amongst the bird watching community, and they had no idea. And there was this whole market of potential customers that they weren't speaking to at all. And it sort of informed and adjusted the way that their communication strategy was because there was a whole audience there.
Of people that don't want to kill birds, they just want to watch them.
Yeah, I just want to watch them. But just the quality of this of the rifle scope itself, for some reason, became a favorite amongst certain bird watchers, and there you go. So now you have a rifle scope company that's now advertising to bird watchers.
That's amazing. So how did you figure that out?
It's just using these audience listening tools that we had.
Hmm.
And this one thing just kept popping up, and we're like, no, 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 we're not interested in that. These are rifle guys. And then all of a sudden, we're like, wait a minute, there's potentially something here that no one was aware of. And so doing SEO like that is like oftentimes a client will think that they know what the problem is, or they'll think that they know what their keyword is. Uh, but unless you actually consult the public and look and use these analysis tools, uh, you don't know for sure. So if you go, let's say a company is a skin care, whatever, they make creams or whatever, and you go, okay, well, we think that our keyword that everyone is looking for is this specialized term that no one uses, right? Because they've come up with it internally, and they're like, well, this is the thing. Well, okay, fine. Maybe 5 people are searching for that per month across the US. But the thing that you should be doing is number one, educating your public to use that term. And number two, getting found for the terms that the public are actually searching. So it's really a question of like a lot of potential business that's being missed because people don't do the work of SEO.
For anybody listening that doesn't know what SEO is, I guess I should have said this before. It stands for search engine optimization, because I mean, I think a lot of my listeners might know, but some might not. And yeah, and it's really important. It's how you get found on search when people are searching, and people are searching for all kinds of things on the internet, on Google, on YouTube. I know for YouTube, I use a tool called vidIQ that helps me a lot with my keyword research. But when you're talking about audience listening tools, what kind of tools are you?
We primarily use SEMrush, and we have a couple other tools. We use Metricool, and a few others.
Cool. I haven't used those, but I've heard of them.
They're great. Of all of the ones that we've looked into, those have come out on top as our favorites.
Awesome. So are those tools that anybody can use, or would it be
Yeah,
better?
they're subscription based, so you'd have to sign up for an account, and then there's a monthly cost associated.
Cool. And then how do they, I'm trying to figure out how they work as far as like figuring out a keyword that is like the bird watching thing, like how.
Uh, so in those tools that I mentioned, that particular audience listening tool has now been replaced by a newer one that we're using. But in that one, it basically gathers uh, what people are talking about on social media, in blogs and forums and stuff like that. So it'll aggregate all of that information into one sort of, then it makes these sort of diagrams of like, here's this keyword of like rifle scopes and shooting ranges and all this stuff over here. And then there's this line going up over here and there's this big circle of bird watching. And you're like, what is that? So it creates this sort of visual graph that you can look at, and then you can drill down into each one of the subjects. But it's a really great aggregation tool for data.
So is it company specific, or is it looking for like a general
No,
keyword?
you'll put in like you'll put in your domain name for your website, and you'll put in like a list of things that you think it should be listening for in terms of keywords, subject matter, that kind of thing. You can put in like for, I don't know, like a financial services company, let's say, they go in and they go, okay, so let's list out all of our things like 401ks, life insurance, and so on and so on, right? And then all of the subjects that they imagine would be useful for this tool to know. And then the tool will sort of do its thing, and over time it'll gather information, and then it'll spit out a report eventually and go, well, here's the actual data. And either you were right or you were off base or you were whatever, but it's a very good confirmation type of tool to see either you were dead on the money and you're going in the right direction, or you were like 2 degrees to the left and you ended up in New Jersey.
Hey, I'm from New Jersey. Don't say anything bad about it.
I'm not saying anything bad about Jersey.
Um, yeah, and the thing is, like, what you said before is it's such a common thing where people think that people are searching for these specific terms that are not like layman's terms, or they're not like what people like, what problem are people trying to solve? That's what they're typing into the search engine.
That's right.
They're not looking for an ingredient. They're looking for a solution to their problem most of the time. Sometimes they might be looking for an ingredient, but usually it's something super general. And
Yeah, you sort of have to be willing to assume the viewpoint of the person who's doing the searching
mhm,
and go, if I was that person and I wasn't an expert in this field, what words would I use to describe this thing?
mhm, yeah. And I see also the other thing I come across, especially even like in some of the client work that I do, where people want to title like their courses and stuff with like these clever names that don't like actually describe what the thing is,
Yeah.
and like you can't, it's cute, but it's not searchable.
Yeah. I had a designer friend years ago who used to use this phrase, is sometimes being clever is just for being clever's sake,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't actually get the job done.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Um, there's another term I've heard, like clear is better than clever or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
People
exactly.
think it's boring to name your course like the exact thing that it is. Like, it's boring, right? The title would be boring, but it would show up in search and people would be able to find it.
Sure, like unless you have a brand of your own that people would search for you, and then the title of the book is sort of irrelevant. You can be as clever and wordsmithy as you want, you know.
Yeah, if you're
That's not to
Joe
say that
Rogan or,
wordsmithing sometimes works great too. You might come up with the world's greatest pun and all of a sudden capture a whole bunch of search that you didn't even know about, right?
right.
But but for the most part, I think, especially with just like website taglines and, description of services and description of products, that kind of thing. It's the taking the point of view of the person searching first before trying to be clever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Taglines are another big one. And titles, like
Yeah.
titles that people give themselves that people just are not searching for because it's some type of a clever thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that SEO metadata, right? So it's title, description, uh, and then the site tagline. But the page title and page description plays a lot into that too. So like in an about me page, for example, they go, "We're great and we do this and we do that." And like they just talk about themselves for, the whole page. They never mention anything about what it is that you're searching for, what it is that you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like tip number one for marketing is make it about your audience, not yourself.
Right.
But it's for whatever reason people forget or it's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
What other useful tips, tricks, hacks do you have up your sleeve for people? A lot of my people are marketers, so
Yeah.
share any of your expertise on the topic.
I don't know what kind of things are you running into the most. Maybe I can chime in on uh give some helpful tips, so to speak.
Yeah.
See, that was an example of me turning it around on you.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so let's talk about social media. Do you do much on social media?
Yeah, we do some. I mean, to me, social media is really a tool to drive traffic to the actual site and the product. So I think there's that example of like social media is the party where you go to. It's the networking party. And you
Mhm.
meet someone and you give them your business card and you invite them to come into your brick and mortar store and see what you actually offer.
Mhm.
So content on social media should follow social rules in person, as far as I'm concerned. Like you should have about 80% of useful information that would be interesting to your audience. And 20% of the time you can go, hey, by the way, I have this store over here. You can come check it out. But
Mhm.
if you walk into a party or cocktail party and you go, hey, everyone, look at me, come and buy my things, everyone's going to turn their back on you.
Mhm.
So it sort of follows that model in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm along the same lines where I always like I see it as a way to drive, like I have a website, that's the hub. We use social media to drive people to that hub and also onto, the way that I do marketing and teach marketing is building an email list. So driving
Right.
people off of social media onto your email list because social media, we're dealing with algorithms, we're dealing with things getting hacked, things getting potentially you can have your site shut down. I've had like my YouTube channel shut down multiple times. And, like, so if we're putting all of our eggs in one basket on social media, it's risky because we don't own those platforms. So there's that piece of it as well. But
Totally. Yeah, and email lists are super valuable. That's where your money is.
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
building up a database of people who have originated that they're interested enough to give you their email. They
Mm-hmm.
want to know more about your products and services. And then, monthly, every week, whatever, you send them out a little thing, and eventually someone on that list is going to go, you know what? Yes, I will buy that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of times it's about timing, not
Hmm.
I just heard a statistic today, and I might be wrong about that. I mean, I've heard the statistic before that it takes like 7 to 12 touches before someone's ready to take out their credit card and buy something. But I heard a statistic today, and I want to say it was like 2% of people buy things on the first exposure.
Hmm.
So like and that's one of the reasons why I believe in the email list so much is because it gives you a way to consistently stay in front of people so that when they're ready or when the timing's right, sometimes people aren't ready now for whatever reason. And then down the road, they get an email from you and the timing's right and they're ready. But it's also a really good way to build a relationship with your
Yeah.
audience. because on social media, not everybody's going to see the stuff you put on there because of the algorithm on the whatever given.
Totally. Or maybe they didn't log on that day, or maybe they were, on holiday for a week or whatever, but your email list is really you're sending your ships out,
Hmm.
just like sending ships out every week, every month, whatever. You just keep sending those ships out, and eventually those ships will come back.
Hmm.
When you expect them to or not is irrelevant, but one
Hmm.
day those ships will come back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had people that have been on my list for years before they ever buy anything. And so
Yeah.
eventually they do. But it's like you said, it's like people raising their hand because they want more information from you or they want to hear from you, as opposed to people on social media. It's interruption marketing on social media. It's not like they're not
Yeah.
opting in to hear what you have to say. It's just showing up there.
Right. And again, it's like being at a cocktail party and some guy with a clipboard comes up to you and goes, "Excuse me, can I ask you some questions? I have a survey." And you're like, "Dude, I am not interested in that right now."
Mhm. Yeah. And some people just really like, one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody sends me like a Facebook Messenger message with a link in it. Like they haven't, I don't know what they have. They haven't gotten my permission to show me anything. And they're just like, I have this thing, here's a link.
Yeah, same
I'm
on
like,
LinkedIn. I get it all
yeah,
the time
yeah.
where
I'm
it's
like,
like,
does that, it's not, it doesn't work. Like, why do people do that?
yeah.
Spam.
Well, it's a, there's a sort of formula for establishing a relationship. Is first you got to make yourself known, right? First you got to make contact. Like you have some form of or way of communication with that person. Then you make yourself known. Then you find out what they need and want, and you exchange what you need and want with them, and then you deliver it. And you grow that relationship from this is just common sense. Like we do this in human nature, but we don't do it online for some reason.
Yeah, I know. It's like the Wild West.
Yeah.
And then like the other thing is just a lot of people feel like they need to put like even like under your YouTube video when you have a call to action or on a social media post or whatever. I always tell people to send people to a capture page, give them something to exchange their name and email address for, instead of just putting a link to a sales page. A lot of people will put a link to a sales page, and then if the person doesn't buy right there on the spot, they have no way to know that they even went there. They have no way to follow up with them. And it's game over. Whereas
Yeah.
if you have people opt in first, then now they're on your email list and you can continue to give them more information about whatever it is and nurture that relationship.
Yeah. We use a really neat little tool. It's called a scorecard. And I'm sure you've seen versions of this, but it's a little survey that you can build and customize. And at the front end is a little lead capture, identity captures like name, you can add phone number, email, whatever. And then you can customize like 5 questions, 10 questions, 100 questions, whatever you want. And then you can assign scores to the yes, nos, maybes, or drop downs, or whatever, however you structure the questionnaire. And then at the end, it'll spit out a score for them. So to the user, it's they get something of like, oh, I scored myself 8 out of 10 for that thing, or whatever. So they get like an immediate exchange. But the person whose questionnaire it is gets a couple of things. One, they get the identity capture, and two, they get all of the answers to the questions that they want to know about the potential customer. So all of the pre-sales work is now done. Like they've handed you the reason why you should either sell to them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a quiz funnel. I use quiz
Yeah,
funnel.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
And it's like, I love quiz funnels because you can put people into buckets according to their answers because everything's got a score. So depending
Hmm.
on how they answer the questions, like if you have multiple products, you can tell where would be the best place to go. Or I know some people
Right.
even use it, like authors use it for a book where like they use a quiz funnel. They're only selling one book, but according to the answers, they can tell like what part of the book would be most geared towards this person.
Yeah.
And their issues or whatever, like they have a book about relationships, but there's, according to the questions, their specific, issue is with their spouse or whatever. So they're like, in the follow-up email, when they put that person lands in the bucket for spouse relationships, they can do follow-up sequence that has to do with chapter 7 of my book talks about XYZ, and they can market the book based on that specific chapter, selling the same book that someone in a different bucket is having trouble with a relationship with their parent,
Right.
different chapter, but it's the same book, and you can market differently depending on how people answer the question. So yeah, I love stuff like that, where you can get all of that data on the front end. And it does make the person that takes the scorecard, like you said, like they feel like they've gotten something in return, like with the quiz funnel,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like a video at the end that says, you are
Mhm.
this type, and this is what it means.
Right.
If you want to learn more about that, or if you want to, get some access to some resources about that, then here's what I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one that we use breaks it down into like low, medium, and high. So, if they score low, then you can customize the response to that of like, okay, you scored 2 out of 10. Here's some free tips on how to increase that score. And if you want to know more, contact us. If you score medium, same things like, yeah, you're doing pretty well in these areas. Here's how you can do better. If you want to contact us, here's some information. And then, similarly with high, it's like, great job.
Mhm.
It is,
You
there's
don't need us.
or if you want to do even better, right? There's always a way that can be improved, unless you get like 100% or whatever. And then in that case, good luck to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know we're getting to the end of our time here. Do you have, I would love for you to share just anything else you want to say about the work you do in the world, and how, what in different ways that you can help people, and also how they can find you.
You can look us up on meritusmedia.com, and you can see my design work on falcocreative.com.
I'll put all that in the show notes in case anyone's listening.
In case I blitzed by that too quickly. Uh, yeah, if you're curious or want to start a conversation or need some tips or help, or if you want to hire me for something, reach out and say hi.
Yeah, yeah, his design work is phenomenal. At least go check it out just for inspiration. If you're going to try to do it yourself, you can at least get inspired. But um, yeah, I feel like sometimes it's not worth it to try to do it yourself, when you can hire somebody that's really good at what they do to just get some really quality work. And um, yeah, I might have to hire you myself for some stuff. Yeah,
Well,
so
either way, I'm happy to connect with you and have really enjoyed chatting with you. So let's stay in touch.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. And it's been awesome to talk about surfing, and
Mhm.
the mindset that goes along with that, and all the fun marketing conversations. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks, Amy.